Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole...
My great aspiration, my greatest ambition is to be so good. Now, in that way, I'm tiresome, as I suppose, to live with, because I want to be a fantastic human being.
I am the greatest. We're not disputing that, Cassius, but how does Sonny Liston feel about it? He can't feel but one way, and let's take everything I say and like it. Because February the 25th, I'm going to take back my job. I'm the champ. He's no champ. He's a tramp.
When you see men fall, don't laugh. Learn. Learn. Because you're on your way up. And the things that tempt people to fall, you and I are not free from that temptation.
What's up? What's up? What's up? Peace and blessings. Glory, praise, and honor to him. I hope all is well with everybody. Man, happy Monday. What's the word? How we feeling? Did you enjoy your weekend? You start your week off the way that you're supposed to. I hope so. I want to give a shout out to everybody in the building, to the writers, poets, artists, to the hustlers. I'm not talking about the stereotypical ones. I'm talking about the ones that's really locked in, doing things legally, sweating, scratching, and clawing and bleeding. You live and actually breathe what you're doing. Because you know, at the end of the day, that there's a level of responsibility that comes with clocking in and out. Salutes to you, man. Much love to you. Y'all see the title. We need to talk about this, and we need to be very honest about what's happening, because quite frankly, there's too many people kind of being overly political about it. You're making it too accepting. I got Sydney in the building. I got Rob in the building. Good to see them back. Looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say on this matter. If y'all have any comments, leave them in the comment section. We will always respond and give you an answer if there's a question. Rob, Sydney, what's up?
What's happening?
Hello. How you guys doing?
What's up, Sid? Sid? Yeah.
Happy Monday.
Good. Good.
Well,
Yeah, y'all see the title. I got a clip I want to play, and it doesn't really matter how we start this off, but I want to talk about the gang culture. I want to talk about why it's celebrated. I want to talk about what's the difference between the gang culture and a actual fellowship with real solid men and women working together to accomplish certain goals compared to what they do, and why is it important that we understand the differences between the two. So like I'm gonna bring this clip up. It's not very long. It's like a minute. Don't really matter who kicks us off. Let me bring this up on the big screen.
Doing it all over a street corner that you claim but don't own. You're doing it all. Gang culture is stupid. Being a gang member is dumb, because the whole point of your gang is to kill your own people, steal from your own people, destroy your own community. It's stupid. And you're doing it all over a street corner that you claim but don't own. You're doing it over colors. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then y'all go to jail talking about, free. Oh, keep him. Your homie just killed 3 kids for no reason because he wanted stripes in his hood. He wanted respect from his homies. First of all, that's gay. Second of all, that's dumb. And most of y'all be broke. I can understand if you're a gang member who is the CEO of Apple or who's curing cancer, but no, you're a broke gang. It's dumb. It's stupid. What? Gang culture is.
Is he wrong? Is he? I didn't hear anything inaccurate. I think it's absolutely stupid. I think the whole idea of it is stupid. Just saying, it's not a brand new concept or a conversation that hasn't been had before. Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word gang culture? Is it barbecues? Is it celebratory fireworks with a grandiose entrance of a man and a woman coming to enter a community with flowers, a pair of scissors to cut the red tape that's supposed to allow these kids to enter a space of recreation that keeps them from stabbing and killing each other? Like, what are your initial thoughts on gang culture itself?
The first thing that comes to mind is when I was in high school, we read the book The Outsiders, and so I kind of associate it with that type of imagery. But generally, the way I see gang culture is it's a little bit of indoctrination, a little bit of like that need to fit in, and then also the kind of like I'm going to go against the system type of thinking. But I think overall it just has a really high cost, because most people that are in gangs don't get out alive or uninjured. Like, there's a lot of violence, incarceration. People are going to lose opportunities because workplaces aren't going to want to have them, especially when they once they identify themselves with tattoos too. It kind of sticks with them for the whole life. And yeah, I just think it's not worth it. I understand the psychology behind why people join, but it I think gang culture is kind of an indication of how in turmoil our communities are. Like, I think gang violence, I don't know this specific, like, I don't know if there's actual like research on this, but my guess is that the more stressed out people are, the harder it is for people to get by, the more likely they are to turn to gang violence. Because once you are a adult that can't afford to live, you have to work hours and hours, you're going to be away from your kids. It's kids that are not supervised are very frequently the ones that end up in gangs. So yeah, I definitely think there's a relationship between the stress that the communities are under, and the likelihood of people entering into this lifestyle.
All right, first we got to go with the history of it. The first gang was the United States government, and I got to be careful too, because I've seen some people getting fired for talking about Charlie Kirk, whatever. A lot of teachers getting fired for posting, so I got to be careful. But I'm gonna speak because I was raised by some gang members, and so we're gonna look at the first gangs was the Crusaders, right? They was coming in. Then you had the Arabs going crazy. Then you had the Christians, you know how they mobbing, the Protestants. Then they came over here and they had the Irish gangs and the Italians and the Russians and the Germans and all that. Then, because the first mass migration in America was done on Irish. So how a lot of them got to stay over there, they decided to police the blacks. So when the slavery was over, the next gang was the KKK, right? So when they did all of that, we got to look at the history of why the black gangs and the Mexican gangs and the Asian gangs formed. They was formed to stop police brutality. And they had a moral code, and they had standards, and they supported education. They fed the homeless. They protect the single mothers. They built them houses. They were doing all of this. And then after a while, the gangs got infiltrated. And then it turned into like a snitch culture. And then the drugs came and then really screwed everything up, which we know that the drugs were purposefully put in our communities, and the money split everybody up, because the first gangs was not like that, even up until today, where even Larry Hoover was seen promoting unity, promoting education after all he realized he was doing that he did. And then also Tookie, when Tookie got life, Tookie Williams, when he got life, he realized that it got out of control, right? But we got to look at the original intent for those gangs was to stop police and government brutality in their neighborhoods. And again, they had a moral code. They had a street code. You did not cross each other. You could trust each other. You took care of each other. It just so happened that if you was born in these lines, you pretty much had to rep your set. And then even back in the days, they didn't even force it on children. It wasn't all of that. You was born into it. They was, you know what, we come from this earth, we had these circumstances, y'all gonna be better than us. Over the years, everything turned out. And then to now, to where there's still a moral code. And if you follow it, in some cases, it can be healthy. And to me, really is no different from the Democrats and the Republicans and the independents or the leftists and the rightists or whatever. And at the end of the day, what everything is crossed at is that there's no rules anymore. Anybody could do what they want. They don't follow the sets. They don't follow. Everybody is allowed to make their own rules. And I'll use Nipsey Hussle as an example. What a lot of people don't realize is that the day he got shot, was the day before he was going to do a gang truce with the sheriffs. And his set was so powerful. They was making so much money independently. He was giving people jobs. He was feeding the neighborhood. He had he pretty much set up a small Black Wall Street in his community, and he promoted uplift. So I wanted, you know, the new stuff and snitching on each other, and nobody's following, nobody's teaching the kids, and everybody's scared of the kids and all of that. It's a little out of whack. But if you really pay attention to it, and if everybody followed the rules, it would be a lot of safer communities. Now though, it's become a ploy, and they make it look like it's just Black and brown people. But who do we celebrate? We celebrate Lucky Luciano. We celebrate the mob. We celebrate Al Capone. We celebrate, you know what I'm saying? And to the point, what the biggest gangster right now would be Snoop Dogg. And I will argue that, okay, he did a lot wrong, but right now he does tons of stuff for the community that's not promoted. But again, it's become a money thing, and it's become a means of divide and conquer.
See, I just based off of listening to the history and the rundown, I understood it to be something that was supposed to be like, you know, kind of what you described, a group of people who they were moving with the intentions of keeping things safe. And I always go back to the root cause for why things start to turn sour. Like if you have a formula that works, why change it? But the common denominator that always ends up being my point of reference is greed. Greed, power, and control. Because what do you need to protect people from? What's the point of having bodyguards and having folks with weapons? Well, what's the point of having a government or a system set up to maintain some sense of order? Because there's something that somebody wants. Is this from a place of purity? Like, I want to feed my family. Am I going to go out here and rob people for it? If push come to shove. If you're making it difficult for me to do it. Or you can go with option B and say, well, maybe I'm just programmed to want to do things the easy way. I want to take shortcuts. Or maybe the pressure is just so overwhelming, but the way that the world is set up, you need 3 and 4 jobs to be able to maintain your livelihood. Every time your check comes in, your money is gone automatically. You need something quick. I can't wait until 2 weeks. I need this right now. They getting ready to shut off all my stuff. Let me go ahead and call such and such. Let me go ahead and hit a lick real quick, and boom. But what I'm seeing is like this shit is more about celebrating a reality. Yeah, pretty much. It's like you're basically telling me that what you're doing is conducive to the development of these ran down houses, but all you're really telling me is you're about yourself. This has nothing to do with culture. This has nothing to do with black on white or white on this or that or that. This is more or less about you being indoctrinated spiritually through your own works. And I don't know, like I never really, something about it always just felt cheesy to me. The police are supposed to protect us. But even we consider them gangs. The government is supposed to protect us. We consider them gangs. So, like, my initial thoughts, most of this, majority of it comes down to greed, power, and just folks that just want to maintain their level of abundance, if that's the word. Are you like?
I was looking into some of the history in America, just out of curiosity, and one of the things that I said earlier is definitely reflected in what they're saying. For example, this is one of the statements: gangs start for many reasons, but in the US, they often arose from conditions like poverty, social inequality, racial discrimination, and urban overcrowding, especially during periods of rapid industrialization and high immigration. It pushed people into cities with few jobs and resources, so they formed these gangs to serve as protection, community, and a sense of belonging in difficult environments. By the 70s and 80s, gangs which were originally confined to like their specific locations started to have more conflicts because the suburban regions started to like combine and stuff, so cities weren't as separated. So that led to the overlap, which led to the issues. So that's why the 80s and 90s, you saw an increase in really severe violence within the communities because they were starting to run into each other, basically. And interestingly, it says that one of the first street gangs in the U.S. emerged after the Revolutionary War. It was basically a response to the social upheaval, and a lot of them were adolescents. And after the Industrial Revolution, that's when gangs really started popping up a lot more because then people were starting to move to California for work. So then you had like the Irish, the Italians, the Polish, like all of these communities being self-segregated at the time. And so that kind of allowed those gangs to arise. And it says one of the most common factors is job instability and poverty because it forces them to seek out opportunities that will pay them even if they're dangerous, because at a certain point, if you're desperate enough, you're going to take whatever you can do. So it looks like that's kind of what contributed it to getting this bad. And I think once we hit the 90s and 2000s, it probably changed because of the media to a degree. I feel like once you start having online communication between groups, that's when like tempers can flare even more, because then you can exchange more back and forth, more insults, more lies, whatever. And so it's easier to kind of contribute to the divisiveness between the groups. So I think that the technology advances also contributed to this, and then also overpopulation. And I would not be surprised if housing costs are also starting to affect gang cultures, because if you can't afford to live in a house, you're probably going to start doing desperate things to get yourself through life. So also just pointing out an irony that what happened to what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name? The one that just got killed. He got killed as he was about to say that gang violence is the biggest source of violence in the country, which is not true. The most common form of violence is murder. But yeah, he was trying to say that gang violence is the biggest problem in America. But I feel like I don't know if it's just because I'm not in it, obviously, but I kind of feel like they're losing their grasp on like their power, because I don't know why, but it feels like they're losing their power, their influence, but it just could be where I am, because I imagine in the inner cities it's a lot more prevalent than what I am seeing.
I mean, again, like I said, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate lightweight, because It was the gang who used to check my report card. It was the gang who used to send me upstairs. It was the gang who often stopped me from doing something stupid when they see me. You know what I'm saying? I didn't join. The only reason I didn't join is because the same reason I ain't joined the Navy or the Air Force. I don't like authority like that to just be telling me what to do. I don't, especially if I don't know you. You couldn't just come and just be telling me what to do. But I could tell you firsthand, when we was hungry, the gangsters was the ones who was feeding us. When we needed school clothes, those was the ones providing it. When our parents was out doing what they was doing, they was the ones, you know what I'm saying? Them was the ones. And then at the end of the day, when you couldn't get no job unless you was mopping or sweeping, and it cost you more to go to work, and your family hungry, and they telling you, boom, you could come over here and we got you. You had a little sense of a family orientation, and then that's where most of us a lot of times got our father figures. So with that, you know, it was negative, but again, it's no different from what any other culture was doing. And then, like you said, Sydney, you was absolutely right. They turned it into a money grab, right? So those neighborhoods now, the little bit of pot that they got to eat from has to be split. Then you have these problems because now everybody's going out the same pot. You got the police infiltrating these people. You got the police also feeding most of this behavior, right? Because they was the ones a lot of times supplying the drugs and whatever it means, supplying the weapons and all of that. So a lot of times, you know, we'll look at it as bad, but there were some of them who did way more positive for the community than anybody will ever speak about. It just now we're going full backwards to where only the negative aspects of the culture are being promoted, and then there was the money. So we already know. I guess they remember when NWA was out, Negroes with Attitude. I say it like that. Supposedly the industry heads of the music industry had these these private meetings, and decided that that's the only kind of music we're going to promote so we can fill the private prisons. I'm conspiracy theorist about that because nobody ever puts a name, but at the same time, you know what happens if you put a name, you might disappear, right? So when the culture became monetized, it became monetized negatively for us because, again, nobody said nothing about the Sopranos. Nobody said nothing about the Goodfellas. Matter of fact, everybody wanted to be like the Goodfellas. Everybody, until they found out they was the one guy was a rat. Everybody wanted to be like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. Everybody wanted to be like the mob. People when The Godfather came out, people patterned their whole lifestyle on The Godfather's part 1 through 4. All this mob culture, the Valentine's Day Massacre, the Prohibition, the bootlegging. They still making movies about this. You know what I'm saying? They still pumping that side, whatever. They still, it's just that when the people of color took it over, now it became taboo because even the Chicanos wasn't necessarily a gang, but if you pay attention, especially in LA, they communities was being brutalized. So you ain't have no police protection. Like you said, you ain't have no government protection. What you gonna do? So now I would say with the drugs being stronger, more rampant, a lot of the parents not there, even the working parents, a lot of times they working so hard they don't have time to ask their kids how they feeling. This is the structure that they're gravitating to, and again, if you don't have no structure or no guidance or nobody to lead you different, a lot of times that's what it is. And then in the prisons, at the end of the day, you don't have no choice but to gang up Like they say automatically, like when you go, you got to go to a side to where even if you don't choose, automatically you're going to affiliate yourself with something, mostly based on skin color or the language you speak. So now, to a certain extent, you don't have no thing. And like I said before, until now, it wasn't even necessarily forced on the kids. You might be affiliated because your parents was that, but they wasn't. Back in the days, your parents was trying to send you to college. So now we got something like I seen somebody say, well, Cardi B promotes this stuff, but she told her daughter don't listen to this kind of music. They send their kids. Jeezy sent his kids to college. He talked about selling dope. He sent his kids to college. Like, who doesn't do that? You know what I'm saying? And then at the same time, the biggest problem with that is that we don't have nobody teaching the youth that this is entertainment. This is what sells, right? Because for us, when we talk about gangs, it's a problem. But for them, we celebrate Gotti. The Gottis, they had their own television show. We had the Mob Wives. They had they TV shows. Jersey
Even video games glorifying violence.
Oh yeah, Jersey Shore. They act like gangsters.
GTA.
You know what I'm saying? Mob mentality for the money. But then when it gets active, because this is how I know, especially for like I'm gonna say people of color. To me, when they're real effective in making change, they get outcasted or they get erased. Right? And look what they did to all of it. And then I'm gonna yield the mic after I say this. Look at all of the black gangsters. I just used them for example. When they changed around and went to start changing and start going back in those same communities, all of them got X'd out. And then they'll say the Black Panthers was a gang, and the Black Panthers didn't break no laws. And they were illegally taken out the entire time, the whole way they were dealt with, to where now, okay, I see the error in my ways. The people that trying to do good, they get disappeared. So we gotta, you know what I'm saying? We gotta have a balance when we're talking about it, because at the end of the stuff that they're showing is corny, but at the same time, if you really pay attention to the roots of it, it wasn't supposed to be nothing like this.
I think eventually at some point, everything that is good always gets watered down, or they feel a need to enhance it, or how can I put this? You add on things, or you sprinkle in innuendo, right? Like you're covertly attempting to brainwash people. So on the surface level, oh, we're just a group of people. We're just trying to protect what is ours. We don't want injustice here. Like Cindy said in the comments, it's like it sounds good in theory, but let's add a couple of caveats. Now, what you're not understanding is they're showing you that loyalty is supposed to be you don't tell on people. Snitching is bad. But by you not telling on people, they're not mentioning that by you not saying anything, you're still kind of adding on to the problem too. Because by you keeping these secrets, if these are crimes that are being committed, how does that really help the community? That's more about yourself than it is the community. Because you don't want me to get you in trouble or put you in a position where you have to be held accountable for your decisions by marketing it as you're doing justice by keeping this criminal activity to yourself. That's innuendo. The movies pretty much like you just described explain and express it pretty much. Goodfellas, I watched that movie for the first time, and I sure as hell, me and two other people, I was like, man, we about to take over the world, my nigga. It's gonna be me, you, and her, and then this the plan. We're gonna save up all our money. We're gonna buy these guns, and then we was gonna go out here and play Robin Hood. We're gonna go after all the dangerous people. We're gonna pick their stashes. We're gonna bring justice back to them. We really was like on it, but that's not how. That's not reality, man. That's not how life works. The politics are different. The way that these people think is different. Their idea of supporting is different. I think everything gets eventually turned into something. It's like a clone version of the original. The clone version looks similar, but there's some added ingredients, like taking medicine or something that says side effects may cause this, and this. They don't tell you about the side effects in the game culture. But they do make it look fun. They make it look hella fun, hella entertaining. And to your point, adults still act like this is something to be cool with. The youngins, they don't know no better. The parents ain't really teaching them nothing. And the adults are still acting like they're trying to hold on to what little youth they got left. It's all strange. It's all disappointing. Like from tagging and putting like spray paint on porches and on cars and trains, the graffiti stuff, like even with that, it's like, come on, man. You know how much money as a businessman I invest in this, and you're tagging my property, but y'all consider that art? Nah. I'm cool on that. Is it possible to do negative and positive and still get the same level of adoration for being in a gang? Can a gang do negative and hurt people while also simultaneously giving back? Does that not sit well with anybody else? Is it just me? Like, I mean, because like, how are you going to tell me that Frank Lucas can, or Al Pacino, or any of these people can do what they do and still get celebrated for it? You got it. Are you?
I think part of it is that like FOMO, maybe like people who don't have that type of community, they might see it as like in psychology, humans tend to over exaggerate the good, and unless they have a like psychological thing, they often diminish the possibility of the bad things happening. They don't usually think that something bad could happen as a result of their actions. So I think there is a little bit of that element. It kind of goes along with what I was planning to say. One of the things that I think is also an issue is young people under the age of 30 have a very different view of mortality. Because of the way that the brain works, your brain does not stop developing until 25, even though everyone says you're an adult at 18. And unless you have experienced death yourself personally, most young people don't actually understand that they're not immortal. They think that they can survive things that are highly dangerous, and they don't think that they could possibly at that age die from something. And so they're higher risk takers teenagers, when they're in their 20s. And most gang members are teens, 20s, 30s. A lot of them don't even live to their 40s and 50s. Some people manage to get out, but that percentage is quite low. I also wanted to address the, like, just like we do with the Middle East. We say, oh, everyone in Iraq is a terrible person. All Muslims are evil. They just want to kill Americans. Gangs exist on the same spectrum as everyone else, as every culture. There's going to be the extremists that want to kill everyone, that are really violent, that want to cause chaos and hurt people. But then you have people on the other side of the spectrum that are literally just there because they want to hang out with their friends. Maybe they drink or do drugs or whatever, but they're not out on the street shooting people. And we have to keep that in mind. And then there's also good gangs. Like I mentioned, the Hells Angels. They're one of the biggest advocates for children. They donate a lot of money to children's hospitals. They promote a lot of campaigns to help kids get their treatment. They do GoFundMes. Like they have a whole bunch. Like my friend told me all about all the stuff that they do, and they give back a lot to the community. I think we have to kind of consider how much the media is also influencing our view of gangs, because I'm more than certain these people are exaggerating what we do. They're like, oh, we have young people running the streets and shooting everyone. And there are areas that will happen, but it's not everywhere. But they make it sound like everyone is at risk of getting shot on the street. And it's just not that way. But I think our mind, especially, it makes sense, like since the 80s, we've had TV, we've had depictions of this, we've had a lot more access to imagery and information. And as we know, not all of that is correct, or it's exaggerated, or it's opinions that people think are facts. So I imagine a lot of this violence is exaggerated and used to villainize these groups of people, and also against immigrants. And I wrote this while I was while you guys were talking, so I'll just read it. We also need both sides of the coin. Some people are willing to push the envelope and cause disruption for justice, like Malcolm X. Then there's those who move within the law and attempt to change things from within, like MLK. To make change happen, we have to have both ends of the spectrum. We have to have people willing to disrupt the system, and we have to have people willing to modify the system. And they work together, because one brings attention to the issue and gets people emotionally and physically involved in the process of demanding justice. And then you have those that are behind the scenes changing the legislation, changing the laws, and working with the politicians. Only having legislation but no opportunity to protest will feed resentment in communities, and it'll only lead to violent upheaval if they're not given the opportunity to change the things about their society that are not working for them. So I think the villainization of like any sort of violence, like even if it's violent protests, they'll automatically just jump on those people, villainize them, not even consider what their positions were. They don't even question, why are the people doing this in the first place? They just automatically want to be like, oh, violence, kill them off, get rid of them, we don't want them. But understood psychology, figure out that they're being violent for a reason. They're not just being violent because they're like, yeah, we're gun happy and we want to go out and shoot people. No, they're angry because people are taking their rights. They're not able to afford food. They're not able to afford their homes. They're homeless. They don't have health care. Like, there's a number of reasons. And as we see a change in our country and our ability to speak out, we are probably going to see this rise of violence. We're probably going to see things similar to what we saw in the 50s and 60s into the 70s. I can't imagine that as our rights are being slowly stripped away, people are going to sit there and do nothing. So I think that's something to consider, that oftentimes violence does not come out of nothing. Violence comes out of discomfort and mistreatment and the feeling that you're stuck and can't get out of it. So I think we really need to revisit how we work with gangs. In Mexico, they have started a program where they basically pay people a salary to leave the gangs and stop dealing drugs or do criminal activity. Like, she's opted to pay the groups of people to prevent them from feeling the need to be violent. And since she did that, I think it was like 2021 or something like that, they've had a rapid decrease in the crime that they used to have in their cities. A lot of the more modern cities don't actually have a lot of those issues anymore. Obviously, they do still have some issues, but there has been a pretty dramatic change since she decided to work with those groups of people rather than just villainizing them, pushing them out, putting them in prisons. Especially, we all know, when you put them in prisons, oftentimes they're going to learn to be violent even if they weren't before, because when you're in prison, you're in survival mode. You are always having to watch your back. You could literally get killed for anything, a look, a quote, like whatever, sometimes for nothing. So we have to find a different way to approach our what we do with gangs and gang violence, because very clearly this is not working, and it's only really causing a divisiveness between law authorities and people. And I would not be surprised if there's a link between the rise in police brutality and gang violence as well. Because as you have the people that are supposed to protect you starting to hurt people and try and kill people for no reason, or like not even giving people proper justice and be like, oh, you look like the guy, so you're going to prison. I don't care. You're probably going to have people stepping up and be like, if they're not going to protect you, I will. So we really, really have to examine our society for what it is, because that is the root cause of gang violence, not the gang.
Yeah, like I said, I'm glad you mentioned the Hells Angels, because they wreaked a lot of havoc before they changed their leaf, turn over a new leaf. Just like the Nietas, the Latin Kings, the Zulus, the Bloods, the Crips, the MS-13. All of that was formations out of poverty. Even Malcolm X, if you really pay attention to Malcolm X, even when he was with the Nation of Islam, they really wasn't even breaking the laws. And then when he broke away from them and he formed the international group where he had all different cultures, they definitely didn't break the law. If anything, all of the gang and the mob violence was afflicted on them. Him and Martin Luther King. They was firebombing their houses. They was giving his family death threats. They was killing their people. They was locking them up for no reason. You couldn't even walk across the bridge without getting your head bust. And a lot of people think that was only happening in the South. It wasn't. It was all in Chicago. It was all in New York. We know for a fact right now that Buffalo, New York is one of the top 5 most segregated places in the country. Youngstown, Ohio. Chicago, you know which side. It was 2 sides, the white side and the black side. You ain't go over there. So if anything, the gangs that's glorified, they still getting away with it, and they're not organized. They're not looked at as terrorist groups. When you look at what happened on January 6th, that was gang culture to its finest. To me, it was a big game of catch the flag. But guess what? They said Black lives don't matter. Then they said Blue lives matter. They killed police. What happened to Blue Lives Matter? They let those people go. They was trampling people, beating people, spraying them with mace, beating them with batons. They ain't do that. But a couple of weeks before that, when the people of color organized, they was hosed down by the government to clear space for this guy to come through and do his speech, where he even held the Bible upside down. But they ain't call that.
That happened multiple times too.
You feel what I'm saying? They ain't call that gang activity. So we gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, Cindy, we gotta watch how we define it and how we portray it, because a lot of it is not is lopsided the way the media portrays it. And y'all are right. I studied educational leadership and policy for 2 years, or 4 years. And I found out in a nerdy way, research oriented, when you put out a new policy, you have intended consequences and unintended consequences, meaning like what you said, we put out this medicine, it's gonna heal headaches, but guess what? It hurts your liver. It hurts your big toe. Wooty woo. And that's the same way that it went with the gang culture. And now, again, as one big distraction, they're making it look, oh, the immigrants are the gangs. No, who's doing this stuff? Like even and listen, before I gotta really like hold back today, because I'm ready to get crazy with it. I ain't finna lie to you. The guy just got shot. They threatened the HBCUs. My HBCU here, Florida A&M University, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, right here in Tallahassee, Florida, had to close down for a day as a result of what happened to Charlie Kirk, which was done by a white person. Nobody sanctioned.
White Republican with MAGA family members.
Nobody sanctioning them. Nobody stopping MAGA. And they
literally caught a picture of him at 16 with a bazooka.
Right. And whether Trump, that assassination plot was real or fake, nobody condemned that, really. He used that as a trophy. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight. Who? Who are you fighting? Who are you fighting? Because guess what? We're not the problem. That's y'all against each other. They ain't really come. Matter of fact, they use that to generate even more violence. Oh, he's going to be remembered, da 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 da. And instead of going at each other or finding out who really did it, y'all blaming people of color. We don't even have the means or the resources to do that. He got killed at a primarily white institution, right? But we could get fired if I say the wrong thing, or if I say too much. I could have my job tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? And that's crazy. That's gang behavior.
At least 3 people so far in the last 2 days that I've seen have gotten fired for what they have said. All 3 of them were Black women. One of them was the only Black writer at the New York Times, and she was fired because she said that she disagreed with the support for him.
And I heard some people was like, "Oh, he was all right, dude. He was just a conservative." Woo, woo, woo. But then when I looked at tapes, he was going off on everybody. Nobody condemned that. They ain't condemned that. They was cheering that. So at the end of the day, like, yo, who is your enemy? Like, well, you know, they come up with aliens and monsters and all this, whatever. But to deflect from who is the real gang, you know what I'm saying? Who's participating in the gang behavior? If you really bust it down like that. So I'm glad that you mentioned the Hells Angels, just like I mentioned Nipsey, just like I mentioned Snoop. All of these people, they started out good. They might have came bad, but then they realized, and now when they're doing good for the community, that's when they get X'd out. That's a problem. When this gang violence has been going on for over 400 or 500 years, and we know who it is aimed for, to the point where they named the place down here Alligator Alcatraz, because if they run, they're going to run in the swamp, and there's a good chance of them being eaten by the alligators. They're locking up people here 20 and 30 years. You've been here 20 and 30 years? That guy's family was immigrants. His wife came in immigrant. So what, you know what I'm saying? What we doing here? So a lot of times, like you said, that is a response to the things that are really happening that we can't even discuss, because guess what happens now? If you discuss the truth, now you're getting X'd out. So that's why we don't see none of the good, because like I said, it was for me. I know for a fact the gangsters saved my life, and they did not force me to play. They did not force me to join or affiliate. They, matter of fact, said, young boy, you go a different way. I see something in you. Now, if you just got to have it, whatever, yeah, we'll bring you in, and it ain't going to be pretty. But at the same time, you go a different way. And I know for a fact they did that for me and a lot of my friends. And when I was hungry at night, they fed me. When I needed protection, they came to me. There was time when police didn't even want to help us. They was the ones there. They was the ones standing around the schools making sure nobody get robbed and all that. They was the ones making sure the kids had parental guidance and knew to go upstairs when they was the ones. And at the end of the day, what happened with them? They couldn't get no jobs. They couldn't get nothing gainful. They wasn't promoted to, you know what I'm saying? We know back in the days, we ain't had no representation at all. Like you ain't see no doctor that looked like you. You ain't see no lawyer, no judge, no pilots. You know, so a lot of that is a direct response to the oppression, the systematic racism and discrimination that has been going on in this country from before its beginning, especially when you start thinking about the natives, because all of that, the way they moved them from the east to the west off their territory and took all of that territory, all of that was gang violence.
While y'all both were, articulating yourself, shout out to this new little feature. I don't know if y'all can see it on y'all side, but I got a feature over here on my side. It's a notes feature. So, like during the stream, if y'all have things that you want to jot down so you don't forget them and you can come back to them later, you can put them there. I have mine set up. So I got 4 questions, but I want to reverse it and start from where he left off at.
Can I add one thing?
Go ahead.
Well, one thing was a joke. I was like, oh, so what you're saying is we should put gangs back in schools so they could protect the children. Maybe they'll do a better job. But when you're saying the stuff earlier about how like the government is basically a gang and how they're treating us, the perfect example, like all the stuff with Charlie Kirk and whatever, he's getting all this attention and he's lauded as a hero. They're calling it assassination. Meanwhile, nobody says jack off about the 4 senators, congresspeople, the representatives that were shot in their homes. 2 of them died, 2 of them were injured. Nobody says a thing about them, except for all of us that are like, where is this? Like, how come you didn't lower flags for them? How come you didn't do any sort of like investigation like you're doing with Charlie Kirk? Like, what is, so you don't care about them? They're making it very, very clear that this is gang violence against the Democrats. There's the Republican gang and the Democrat gang, and the Republican gang wants us gone. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider, that the government can very much take on a gang-like activity. Like, even in Soviet Russia, they basically had gangs that were patrolling the streets. In Germany, even before the you-know-who's showed up, they had gang issues. Like, this is not a modern problem. Like, this is something we've been dealing with, but we've been so, like, pacified since the 50s that the government loves you and cares about you and wants the best for you, and they don't care about us. They are here to take what they can from us and leave us as vulnerable as possible, because vulnerable people are cheaper. You don't have to give them things, and they can't demand as much because they're devalued and nobody cares about them. So they're really trying to segregate us into 2 groups that are willing to off each other, just like a gang.
I did a reaction video earlier to Andrew Tate and Piers Morgan. And it was funny that you had brought this up, Rob, because Andrew Tate was trying to paint this narrative as if people were ganging up on Charlie Kirk, that white people were actually more or less victims in 2025, that more violence is happening towards them. He was saying a lot of things that I thought was clickbaitish. My stance on it has always been this: if you don't know the people that you're watching, don't care who it is, if you don't listen to them, if you've never really spent time to actually get to know what they do, how can you then, as a whole, get on the internet and then automatically persecute a person and automatically associate them with being something when you don't even really know them in general? Another thing that I always have an issue with, especially after listening to that, people will hear what they want to hear. You could be saying something completely different with an entirely separate motive, and they still will hear fight, 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 fight. No, I didn't say anything about that. I'm talking about this. What are you going on about? Men and women, any agency, when they speak on something that is uncomfortable, it is always going to rub somebody the wrong way. Whether or not it's the truth or it's fiction, it's always going to rub somebody the wrong way. We are more comfortable with being lied to. We're more comfortable with just, oh, so they said that, so it must be true. Heaven forbid I decide to pick up a book or go to Google and research for myself. That is a problem. That is a huge problem. So my question is, one, well, this is my main question. Why is everyone so fixated on Charlie Kirk? Why is he the main conversation piece? I mean, because we know that there's a million different things happening in the world right now, but nobody seems to be covering it or really speaking on it as much as they're speaking on this. This is on everybody's timeline. This is on everybody's feed. This is in everybody's conversation. Why are people so focused on this? Why are people so triggered by him specifically? Because the same things that you can complain about with him and call him out for without real information, you can say the same thing about everybody else that gets on social media and talks. You think he's the only one that has a voice or an opinion about race or about war or about healthcare or whatever the cause may be? No, he's not. So what's the difference in what are we really talking about here?
My first inclination when I first saw this and all of it's a distraction. He knows about the files. He knows what's in the files. He knows that what's in the files is going to hurt him and his career and his image. And I think he is running with this because it's a really great distraction from everything that's happening. I also think this is happening because the news media has been waiting for this moment. The ones that are super Republican, that are super conservative, that have wanted the white Christian America, they were stoked that one of their biggest mouthpieces was killed, because then they can use that as like, see, here, look, there we go. This is why we need to do all of these things to take away your rights. It's really because they were chomping at the bit to find something to pin on the Democrats. That's why as soon as it happened, they're like, I bet it was a trans Democrat. It was, and no, it was a white Republican. And then lastly, I think there's also that they're shitty people. Like, they don't care about us, and so they are willing to say whatever to get you to believe whatever they're promoting. And so I think they just want to create like divisiveness, be different. Like, some of the stuff that these people say, I just can't even fathom. I just heard Ann Coulter, they asked her how she felt about Trump and everything that he's been doing. And Ann Coulter is another, why do I keep forgetting his name? The one that just got killed. Charlie Kirk. At least he's leaving my brain. I enjoy that. He is very much like her. She spouts the same racist, sexist, awful views, even though she's a woman. But she said straight up, oh yeah, I think Trump is a criminal. I think he's terrible for this country, but anything that gets a wall around our country and kicks out all the immigrants, I'm fine with. That's what I want. And she said that. Those were almost basically her words. Like, she said straight up, yeah, Trump is a criminal. I don't like him, but he's still going to put a wall up and get rid of all these people. And the person was like, isn't that like, don't you care about them? No, they don't belong here. Okay, cool. So this is like the ideology. They just are greedy. They want everything for themselves. They don't care about anyone else. So they're just saying whatever they can to try and steer us in the other direction and get us a distraction, give us something else to focus on. So I think that's part of it. And then from the Democrat side, it's just because it's the hypocrisy. It's exposing that hypocrisy in the Republicans, showing that they are willing to stand behind somebody so atrociously evil that they're willing to promote him and call it an assassination and give him a day and lower the flags and stuff. So to us, that outrage is from the fact that we finally see it. That is our example. As much as they wanted it to be their example, Kirk is our example of the irony of this whole government and what they're doing.
You always take that one person, like they said for the Boston Tea Party, was it Crispus Attucks or somebody started everything. There's always that one person who starts the riot. They use the same excuse for the Black Wall Street, why they burnt that down. They did Emmett Till like that. Remember the last real crazy outrages we had, which was only right, was definitely justified to Trayvon Martin. But that shouldn't even been. And then remember after he was out there with Confederate flags and the Klan and all of that. They put $200,000-$300,000 in his GoFundMe. And then you had George Floyd. I would say it had been kind of calm since the Black Lives Matter. Remember, they leaders was being found in the trunk, disappeared, murdered, and then they got the one leader of fraud. So it's just now that's that one, because I never heard of Charlie Kirk until now. I never heard a word he said. I had to go back and look at clips, and to me, he pumped a lot of hate. He was pushing a whole lot of hate. So when you got people that don't want to change things, they want the easy way out. Like you said, Sydney, they don't want to share. They always get behind that scapegoat. He was one of them. And if you really pay attention, I'm gonna say this guy that's in the White House now has been pumping violence since day one. Never him doing anything. But remember, he said he could go in New York. He said they love him so much in New York, he could go kill somebody in broad day and they won't do nothing. So he been calling people cowards and and scum. Like his whole rhetoric has been disgusting from his first election to the point where they even got the clip where he said, if I ran, I would run Democrat or something because they so stupid, they gonna follow whatever I say. And a lot of times we look at him as the culprit, but he's not. He has backing. He has millions and billions of dollars of backing from some elite people, but also, regardless of what, he has 70 million people that were willing to look past his indiscretions in order for him to have it rather than somebody with some sense. I do. The one thing that I would say also is that the Democrats, they follow the same, because you cannot possibly say, well, you know what, I don't like that guy, but yeah, he's getting the immigrants out. They're immigrants. That don't even sound right. So at the end of the day, whichever way it's going, the Democrats is letting it ride. They ain't starting no war. They ain't they're not saying, they're following the same laws that continue to produce these types of people from both sides. Because at the end of the day, what we do know now, back in the days, the Democrats was the Republicans and the Republicans was the Democrats. They just switched sides, right, for political. But it's birds of the same, what they say, two wings on the same bird. Because if you're seeing all of this stuff going on, if you know this guy's a felon, you know this guy was supposed to be locked up or whatever, and even with everybody deserving second chances, and you don't honor that, you still let him run rampant, then guess what? You as guilty as he is. You know what I'm saying? So one is overt with their prejudice and their extremism, and then the one is covert. They hiding. And how I hear it, I have so many conversations with people who say, well, you know what? He does have some good policies. Like, what? Okay, I hear you. You know what I'm saying? You can't possibly, I like him, but I don't like him. Well, I don't like him, but I do like what he's doing. Like, what do you know what I'm saying? And all that says to me is, as long as it doesn't happen to you. Now let them come to your door and knock on your door with all of that extremism and all of that. I bet you say something different. You know what I'm saying? And that goes to anybody that feels, because in certain situations you cannot straddle the fence. There's either going to be one or the other. So this guy right now has became a martyr for stupidity, and it hasn't been. It's really nothing new. They've been doing it. It's just what he introduced back was the outright blatant violence. Because like you said, Sydney, the politicians, I think some judges got killed. And I'm gonna go as far as even Biden, when Biden, but right before he left, he pardoned some horrible people. He pardoned. Well, you know, those was my guys, and now they knew what was going on. You know what I'm saying? He pardoned a lot of them, even to the point where he pardoned one guy who was locking kids in prison and took over $2 million, one judge, and he was locking these kids away for 10, 20 years so that the private prisons could have free labor. So with that, I don't see, really for me, I don't identify with Nick. I don't see no good group, because at the end of the day, they both are supporting the same laws. They follow the same constitution, who we know was written in a racist way. It was non-inclusive, and it was designed for somebody to be dirt poor so somebody could be rich. And then at the end of the day, you used to could say probably for about 10 years, it's not a color thing anymore. But at the end of the day, I used to talk to my Uncle Jay all the time, and he would say, hey, if we had our foots on this group neck for so long, why would we take it off now? And that's exactly what's happening, to the point where this guy gets killed and they're blaming college students from historically Black colleges and universities. And they know for a fact that his killer didn't even like Black people. But you could still outright, and then guess what too? You could still put an outright threat to where you had these places around the country closing, and they ain't have nothing to do with nothing. So you still willing to kill, shed innocent blood for this stuff that you represent, instead of looking at the facts and say, we got to get ourselves together.
And Chef, I agree. And
I don't mean to cut you off. Hey, Sydney, I was thinking about what you said, the joke. I'm sorry, bro. I'm gonna say this real quick before I forget. I've been trying to get the rappers and all that to talk to my students all this time, because guess what? They will listen to them and the gangsters before they listen to a lot of us.
I can believe that. I've been listening to a lot of videos recently on teachers, and I keep thinking of you. The stuff these teachers go through, the stuff the kids say to these teachers. I'm not surprised they might idolize gangs. Like there was one teacher that listed off things that students had said to her, and they would say things like, "You look like you belong on the streets. I'm surprised you're married. Look at that fat ass." Like they were saying so many disrespectful things that it makes sense that they might idolize somebody that seems like against the grain and like rough and tough, and like you look cool, like you're living the fun life and whatnot, like running around and doing whatever you want. And they're sitting in schools like, oh, I don't want to have to write, I don't want to have to read, I don't want to have to do what people are telling me to. And so they're like, I want to go to the place that they let me do whatever I want. And so I can see how these would be very enticing, especially to youth. There's a study they've done that shows towns that have very little in them, particularly like small towns that don't have town centers or malls or places of recreation, parks and stuff for people to go to. They have some of the highest rates of violence, particularly by young people. They have the highest rates of young criminals, because if you live somewhere and you don't have anything to do, you don't have anywhere to go, spend your time, you have your house and you have the streets, you're probably going to start causing havoc. You're going to maybe break into properties. You might start stealing. You might start like sneaking out at night and sneaking drugs and sneaking things that are more exciting than the empty surroundings around you. So there's also that element of we need to get kids off iPads and start getting them back out there, like back at parks, start getting them hiking and like doing sports and stuff. Like a lot of these kids are so bored out of their minds. They don't have anything to do. They don't have any particular skills. Their parents aren't around. They're working really hard. They're trying to make ends meet, working 3 jobs. Of course they might end up on the streets. It makes sense, because if you have no parental figures, you don't respect your teachers, you don't respect police officers, you're always on social media reading things that only adults really should be seeing, you're playing games that are violent, encouraging using weapons, encouraging using drugs, students are younger and younger trying marijuana and having acts. There was a 3 and 6-year-old that held up a police officer. This was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. Like, we need to give them other things to do that are appropriate for their ages. Otherwise, they're going to find adult things to do.
And let me add on, in addition to both of your points, let me acknowledge Chef real quick before I forget. Chef, I say this all the time, brother. The political party is bullshit. The Republican Democrat shit is bullshit. There is no either. They are just panderers and grifters. The reaction video that I did earlier proved my point. They play the field. They keep it neutral. They want you to think they're on your side while also being safe so that they do not get in trouble. So they tread the waters. They play good cop, bad cop. That's all that shit really is. Now, this is what I think you two are kind of talking about. I did a reaction video to this a while back. Funny how I found it. But this is pretty much what a lot of these kids are growing up to.
Guys, what is this called? What could you do with 2 B's? Good job. Get your dime in the B&B. What is this called, guys? Good job. A dub. Now, if I ask you guys for $5, what is that called?
5 goats.
5 goats. And if we put everything together, what is it called?
A guap.
We got guap. Now, if you say or ask somebody, let me get some money, they say they don't have no money. What that mean? They broke.
Right now, the report cards coming in from these schools, I look at my home state of.
Yeah. Can't tell me that these people don't have agenda. I did not go to school and have teachers like that. All of this stuff is designed to keep us stable. I said this on a couple of streams. I've done 1 or 2 reaction videos to Charlie Kirk. Do I think he's racist? I don't know enough. I don't. I'm going to tell you this. He hasn't said anything that I haven't heard before.
Are you talking about Kirk or someone else?
I'm talking about Charlie Kirk.
Oh, okay. He
Yeah.
is definitely racist. He said a lot of really awful things.
I mean, my point is, like, he hasn't said anything that I haven't heard before already. Like, we hate each other. Black people absolutely hate each other. Y'all can sit up here and say you don't, and say you're not a part of the problem, but you do realize that stereotypes exist for a reason. I don't agree with everything he say. I don't agree with everything that a lot of people say. The fact of the matter is, all right, put it in perspective. Why does it take someone like him to have those type of conversations? Why did it have to be him to do it? Why can't we just do it? It's uncomfortable. Nobody really wants to hear it.
We're also very distracted.
Very, extremely distracted. Distracted by music, by TV, by movies, by video games, by cartoons, by clothes, by fashion, by just anything that's superficial in general. What was I about to say? I'm glad I took these notes, man. I don't believe there's a side. I think they're all just jumbled together, and they're playing stupid, like they don't know what the hell is going on. Put it in perspective. You might have somebody that you watch and listen to, and you might think, oh, they seem to be pretty fair. What is fair? What is reasonable? Rob, Sydney, Chef, y'all listen to a specific person that seems to be very informative. They seem to really have things together. And it sounds cool in theory, but does that, how do you know that they're legit? How can you be so sure that they're not just playing to your audience? Like, they know that this is what you accept, this is what you like to hear, and they're kind of just pandering to you. How do you know they're not just pandering? I mean, they could really be on the up and up, but how do we really know? There's too many people on social media that play this, I'm on your side. And then you have people who say, I don't really care. I'm gonna say what I want, but they're still doing the same thing. And that's how I feel about most of these people. I think most of them.
I think it's also harmful to have all of these like devil's advocates that are trying to play both sides. They try to be, oh, but I want to be equally supportive of both groups and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, there's a point where you have to draw a line. You have to like put your foot down and decide that you're not going to put up with that behavior anymore. Like we have so many people now that are like, well, yes, they did that, but he's still a human. He's still blah, blah, blah. Like they always have reasons for why it's still okay that something horrific had happened. And I think that's also kind of contributing to this because it muddles the debate. It makes people think that it's not as big of a deal. It allows people to have an easy way out and not challenge the status quo. So yeah, just to add on to what you said.
Yo, my biggest fear, even for us, is getting, say we get syndicated nationally, internationally, and now we gotta wear a muzzle. That's my biggest fear, especially for the music. And shout out to my auntie, one of my aunties. She said, boy, you going so crazy in your music, you gotta chill. You can't get a rabbit the gun, shoot you with before you gotta get to the money and then you could do. And I don't believe that. Like that's why I didn't make it out the doctoral program, because I believe that when you want something, there are times when you sacrifice so much of yourself that when you achieve that goal, you can never come back to the real you, to who you were, because you gave up so much to try to get to it. Even mental programming like that. I've argued with people, man, your problem, you was sleeping 8 hours. I had a guy tell me, if you plan to get more than 4 hours of sleep a night, you ain't gonna never get your degree. Well, I ain't gonna never get my degree then. You know what I'm saying? Because that's program. Oh yeah, yes, chef. International Raw. Shout out to you and Squish. They told me, you gotta chill. You can't be putting out your views and all that. You gotta infiltrate the system, and then once you infiltrate the system, you be straight. I don't believe that. I believe that you give up so much of yourself that by the time you get there, you're not effective to the ones you originally meant to help. And I think that's the same thing to draw it back in that would happen to the gang culture. It started out meaning well, but then it just turned into sort of a free for all. And I'm going to say that for our culture as Africans of American descent or Americans of African descent, we know for a fact everything from the movies to the government has been designed to tear our unity apart. Every single thing, to where even the people that did stuff legally were ostracized and outcasted. So now for me, as in, what makes me first of all, I ain't gonna never get on here and act like I'm high and mighty. I'm telling you straight up, before they come, I was a piece of crap. I'll tell you to your face. You know what I'm saying? Am I that anymore? No. Do I do those same things anymore? No. And I also do a lot of things to prevent those things from happening in our communities. So all of the extra that come with it or whatever, when you hit those levels, that's terrible that they do that, because we know at the end of the day, when you get to the top of your game in this country, you become the #1 target, and more people often want your downfall than they want to see you succeed. And what's crazy is that you be in a whole different lane. They could have chose to go in. They got the same 24 hours, but it don't even matter. So again, with this culture, when you look at it, who just did the Super Bowl, the most celebrated, they celebrated Martha Stewart after she went to prison more than before she went. You know what I'm saying? So this I'll say this government and the media, they glorify gangsterism and gang activities. They just skew it to who they appreciate for being gangsters and not, because I remember for a certain extent, just like you said, when you watch Goodfellas, everybody wanted to be Italian for a little while, and it wasn't for no pasta. We wanted to be the mob, including me. We wanted to be the mob. You wanted to move like the mob, and that's just what it was. So now a lot of this stuff has gotten lopsided, and it's making it look like all of the immigrants are gangsters and da. When we see that that's not the case, the same old gangs that have been doing their thing are still here and clearly very effective.
Final questions to wrap up, because I think we covered a lot. Matter of fact, y'all covered a lot. I mean, I gave my here's and theirs, but it's like shit, for real. Y'all were the MVPs tonight. Just for the record, I don't support racism. I don't support racists in general. I'm not for any of that. I guess I'm just like, let me just get to the questions. First question. If would violence in the gang culture, would all of that cease to exist if we didn't have money problems? And the second to last question, are gangs really doing God's work? And I asked that one because, well, we're talking about in general as a whole. We're not just talking about street gangs. I'm talking about as a whole. Are these people that we're calling gangs really doing God's work? Because, I mean, matter of fact, what it was that made me ask that was when you said gangs were the ones that fed you when you didn't have it, or when you were in a position where you needed it. So my thing is, all right, if that's the case, in general, are they really doing God's work? So those are my final two questions. Don't really matter who answers, but I'm just curious to know how y'all feel about that.
I think some might. As I said, like, I think people really exist on a spectrum, groups exist on a spectrum. So there are some that I don't believe would be doing God's work, but I do believe there are some that are doing God's work, are giving back to their communities, are supporting each other. And I mean, truthfully, with Jesus and the New Testament, the new God, he promotes loving everyone equally. It doesn't matter if they're a leper, or if they're a beggar, or if they're like a criminal or whatever. Like, you still have to love people equally and give them the humanity that a person deserves. And above all, we have to love one another. So I think that while there are groups that are violent, I think they are still good for the communities. If we can inch them away from the more criminal activities, I think gangs potentially could start making a difference in our communities, because they're the ones that understand where the serious issues are. They're some of the ones that are struggling the very most, like the homeless, the elderly. All of these groups of people understand what it's like to have nothing, to be struggling and not even knowing if you're going to get food on the table. And so I think that they have the greatest capacity for understanding what we need as a society, understanding which practices, laws, whatever programs are going to have the biggest benefit to their communities, because they're like most gang members are very deeply integrated into the community. They know a lot of people within those areas, especially because a lot of them with gang violence, they tend to stay in the same area at risk of potentially getting killed going somewhere else. And so they get a very intimate view of what those areas are like, and they tend to also be in some of the worst unsafe areas of cities, the most industrialized, the most polluted, the most decrepit, the oldest sections. And so I think if we created, I don't know how it would be done, obviously, but if we found a way to reduce their needs to use violent methods for things and helped people genuinely with resources, such as medical care and water, clean water, food, housing, all that stuff, like I think we could have a decrease in the type of violence that's perpetrated by gang violence. I don't think, just like Chef said, they would still exist. So I don't think we're ever going to be able to get rid of them. As I was reading a comment from somebody saying that it's kind of the oldest, most original form of human existence, because in the beginning we were very tribal. We were like, tribes didn't get along with each other. They'd be fighting. There would be killings because of that. And so it is kind of a natural state for us to group up like that into communities that are familiar with us. So I do think that gangs will still exist. But again, I think that we need to really reduce the incentive for violence, because then that will allow them to shift their focus to helping rather than surviving.
Absolutely. I'm with you, Sydney. I think that people are inherently violent. I think that money, the invention of money, power, like you said, greed, that boosted. But whether you have money or not, people think in groups, like you said, Sydney, tribal. And at the end of the day, a lot of people want what they can't have, and they will spend it whichever way they can to get backing. So I'm with you, Sydney. If more people had the resources, if more people were educated, if more people had peace and harmony in their communities, there would be way less violence, and there would be way less incentive to join the violent parts of the gang. Because right now, you look at the NBA players, they throw gang signs. The NFL players, they throw gang. Like everybody, they made it cute to be gang now. Rich kids want to be gang, and we laughing because most of the gang members is doing it to get out the hood. But everybody runs around now acting like they're hood or like they're ghetto or like they're ratchet until it's time for punishment. I think that there are certain groups, like Sydney said, like the Hells Angels. There are certain sects of people who are doing God's work. I do believe once they realize the error of their ways, because what I know for a fact is that if you really went through it and you really lived that gang life, 9 out of 10 times, you do not want your children in it or anybody else that you love, children, to be in it. So I believe that over time, yes, they do, because right now we're looking at Chicago and all over the Instagram, the gangs have been trucing. If you look at, to a certain extent, what Kendrick Lamar did, even though, it was a battle or whatever, he brought a lot of the gang members together. They're doing a lot in LA, and it's becoming contagious to where people around the country and around the world are realizing that, yes, we do all have our own prejudices. Yes, we do in a certain way discriminate against those who are not like us. But at the end of the day, we're realizing that we have one common problem, and it ain't none of us, because we don't have the resources to be starving each other. So I've been looking for the last month to people, the gang members have been tying their flags, and they have been creating truces to where the gun violence is down. Even I think in Baltimore right now, the mayor is using a tactic to where he has been able to reduce crime significantly because he has, like you said, Sydney, included the gang members into the policy and allowed them to shape a lot of decisions to where they are actually designed to benefit the people who are affected most by the oppressive policies. So yeah, there are certain sets around the country and around the world who are, I even look at Brazil, like Rio de Janeiro. If you look to a certain extent, a lot of those people in the different favelas, they actually set governance to where in their communities with their rules, the crime was way down. So yeah, I believe it can be done because I want to. Most people, even though violent, they are inherently good. And at the end of the day, when you see the damage, once you grow up from that, because as a kid, you want to tear stuff up. That's what kids do. But once you see the error in your ways, a lot of people, they do change. And if nothing else, it may be too late for them, but they are going to make sure that the children are not experiencing the same things.
Beautifully said, both of you. Appreciate y'all, man. Nothing but wise words. I wanted to break this down as best as possible, and I think we accomplished that goal. I really do. I don't have anything to add to that. I think everything that needed to be said was said. Shout outs to Rob. Shout out to Sid. Shout out to everybody in the building. Chef, appreciate you.
I do have a short poem if you want.
I'm gonna let you close out. Y'all know where to find us. We be spinning back tomorrow morning. I think that's pretty much that. I'm gonna turn it over to Sid and let her close us out.
I love this poem. This one's called Helpless, and I wrote it to exemplify what we kind of go through as adults. But I thought it was very fitting because I think this is the attitude that kind of contributes to people needing to join gangs or other groups like that. So it's called Helpless. We are but children gripping through the darkness for someone, anyone, to take our hand. We are but children praying, crying for someone, anyone, to release our pain. We are but children throwing fits, swinging hits for someone, anyone, to realize we're there. We are but children giving of themselves for someone, anyone, to care. We are but children waiting for something, someone, anyone, to fix us. We are but children wasting precious time for someone, anyone, to love you. We are but children deserving someone, anyone, to guide, to heal, to care, to love. If we are but children, could we not become brothers and sisters? Could we not grow together to become mothers and fathers for one another? For we are but children.
And that's a wrap. Shout outs. Sid, shout outs to Rob. Shout outs to the people, man. Y'all already know the vibe.
Put your goddamn button back.
See you guys tomorrow, Lord willing. All right.
Hey, all day. Y'all too.